morning, everyone. It's the 11th of June, Thursday, and I've just been listening into the town hall with all the executives talking about the state of the nation. They're still talking about that the company will look quite different coming out of this, and they're talking about multiple options, and apparently we'll have some firm news on all that by the end of June. I've just received news from my friends who are up in Emirates, and that company's just laid off 600 A380 pilots, and they're not on furlough, they're sacked. They're now no longer employed by that company, and that is repeated in many of these aviation companies around the world. So, I really feel for those guys, and I really take it as another reason why I love being in this company. We're in a pretty strong position. Sure, some of us are going through short-term financial hardship, and none of us know what the future holds, but if I'm going to be in any company right now, I think Qantas is the one to be in. I just received a letter the other day on that note that I'm being stood back up after 2 months of not flying. That's fantastic, and it means we're headed in the right direction. So I'll be stood up probably for just 1 month of flying, and then probably stood down again, but at least it's a step in the right direction. It's quite interesting. You can see clearly I haven't flown for a little while. I look like Robinson Crusoe. This is what happens when you start relying on your own hairdressing techniques. But I thought it would be interesting for today's episode to show you how I mentally shift into that gear for getting ready for simulator, and how I do prepare for a simulator. Hope maybe you do things different. This is the way I've done it for 30 years. See what you think.
Hi, I'm Marty. I flew these with these. I fly these with them. Got a wife, kids, play golf, band, happy life, and then Corona. It's a drag, but you're not alone. Have a laugh with me on... So I'm out of currency for landings and takeoffs, so I'm off to the simulator. So we go to our screen that tells us what we're rostered for. At the end of this month, I'm jumping on an aeroplane to go to Melbourne and jump in the simulator. So I know it sounds stupid, but the very first thing I do is put it on my calendar, so that I'm doing Sim 411 and I'm passengering to Melbourne for the night, and probably what time I need to be at the airport. Gold. Next thing, I go onto the MacWave website that tells us what all our sims involve and entail. In this case, it's a recurrency, Sim 411. It's common to all aircraft types, and I go in and break it down, print it out. I'm old school. I don't work very well copying stuff off screen, so I need to print it out. But there is what we're going to need to do in the simulator. As well as printing out the lesson plan, I also print out a couple of my daily organisational sheets. Most of the short haul guys use these. They keep a track of things like engine performance, V-speeds, engine out plans, and what we did on the day. This is all in keeping with treating the simulator just like the real aircraft. I'm going on a real inverted commas flight. Sims are all about being organised, so I get out my sim prep book, I lay out that lesson plan, and then I get that daily song sheet, and I'm going to transfer all the important information onto it so that I can stay organised once I step into that sweat box of the simulator. About now, I have a look at the discussion items and what the training department has decided is important for us to discuss. I print it out and collate it. Make my own notes, bullet point it so that I can remember it for the brief. And all this prep should come up to about 20% of the time I spend preparing for the sim. The discussions are really important, but they're not the most important thing. I spend about 20% on the knowledge, but about 80% on what I'm actually going to do in the sim. In this sim, I'm actually going to do 3 takeoffs, one with a rejected takeoff, one with wind shear, one with an engine failure after takeoff. I'm going to do some approaches, manually landing or going around with a strong crosswind at some point, intercepting the glide slope from above, or doing it with no glide slope. Now I move my prep from the stuff I need to have every time I go flying. At the moment I feel like Catweasel, I'm all over the place. I need to turn into an aviation Michael Jordan. So I get my licence and medical into shape. I make sure my recalls are going to be word perfect, no more limits off by heart. I have a very robust problem solving model. I make sure I'm up to speed on my manoeuvres. I could never spell that French word. I know my impact drills off by heart. I know how to do a rejected takeoff. And if I suffer an engine failure on takeoff, I know how to deal with that as well. And this is where the hand on the heart rule comes in. Let me explain. When I step onto the flight deck on a real flight, or when I step into the simulator for a simulated flight, hand on my heart, I need to have all of that stuff that I just discussed squared away. It comes down to my own personal integrity. It comes down to shouldering the responsibility of all those people sitting down the back, and it comes down to doing the right thing by the guy sitting next to you. The hand on the heart concept for me is about being able to look someone in the eye and saying, yes, I am up to this today. It's about having a rock solid operation. It's about having the humility to know that better pilots than myself have come unstuck doing this job. It's about respect for that job, for the person sitting next to you, and also for the passengers. And in the face of all that, it is about shouldering the responsibility, in fact, welcoming doing that. That all got a bit intense. This is just a sim we're meant to be preparing for, but don't kid yourself. The sim is the best mirror for where you are at. This is where you get to really look into your own depths as an aviator. It's where you earn your stripes and you earn the ability to really look yourself and others in the eye and not blink, to say, I deserve to be here. And that's not to be discouraging. I love saying, if not you, who? You should be here. You are a great pilot in Qantas and you deserve to be here. This is just a revalidation of that. Moving on, I get my license. I get my medical together. I look at the memory items, or recalls as we used to call them. I can't do them off a screen, so I transfer them onto cards that I just flip through and make sure I know them off by heart, word perfect. It gives you such confidence going to the sim if you know them off by heart. Ditto for the limits. Then I look at my problem solving model. This is so important. If you don't have one, you got to get one. Every good captain has a mental model of how they deal with a problem, any problem. If you don't have one, get one sorted. Next, I go on to manoeuvres, the stall, rejected takeoff, ground proximity warning, traffic avoidance, upset recovery, wind shear, land impact drill if this happens, ditch impact drill if this happens. I look at the rejected takeoff, make sure I know the bullet points of what I'm going to do. Same for the engine failure after V1. And once it's clean, I need to think about how I'm going to get it back onto approach. Finally, I'm going to print out some charts from Jepo, just so I can start my mental chair flying for the simulator. And this is where I do 20% on the talking, so I look at all those discussion items, I print them out, have a bit of a read, make sure I'm ready to talk in the pre-brief, but 80% of this game is what I'm actually going to do when I get in there. So I write them out one at a time. I'm going to do a rejected takeoff. I'm going to do an Enfado, an ILS with a go around, etc., etc. And however many exercises I have in the sim, that's how many white pages I'm going to have. And then I go back and I bullet point each of the exercises I'm going to do in the sim. I sit there and I go, right, I'm running down the runway. Something happens to the aircraft. Somebody's going to say something and then I'm going to react. Okay, what should I reject for? What should I continue for? At what speed? And then I bullet point it all, and then I'm ready to chair fly. Once I've got that page full of the bullet pointed items for whatever maneuver I'm going to do, it will allow me to sit down and close my eyes and chair fly. Chair flying is the most powerful aid to preparing for a sim. It means you simply sit down, close your eyes, put yourself in that simulator ahead of time, and imagine yourself about to do it. Athletes use it, so why don't we use it? I'm sitting there in Melbourne. I'm barreling down the runway. It's about 90 knots, and the guy next to me announces, "You've got an engine problem." What am I going to do? He's announced it. Am I below V1 or am I above it? Is it a fire, engine failure, wind shear, or unsafe to fly? Do I say stop or go? If I say stop, what do? I close the thrust levers. I have to disengage that auto throttle. Are the brakes kicking in, or do I need to manually brake? Where is my hand going? It's sliding down to manually raise that speed brake. Don't do the reverses first. Here come the reverses. He calls 60 knots. FO yells out Qantas, we're stopping, runway blah, in this case 16, requesting fire services. I pull up, what's our position? Identify the problem please mate. I confirm, no recall items at this stage. Let's go for a cabin alert PA please. Pull the checklist, get the fireys on the line. Now you won't get this perfect on your first mental fly through. But that's how good it is. You get to mentally fly it through as many times as you need to get it right. And the best thing is, by doing it, when you step into that simulator, what do you know? You feel like you've done it 9, 10, 11 times before. And it improves your performance without doubt. So in summary, that's how I prepare for a simulator. It works for me. I turn up knowing my recall's word perfect, same for my limits. I know my manoeuvres. I'm never going to have a chance to pull a book if they happen. I have a robust problem solving model, so I'm not worried about what problem I'm going to be faced with in the simulator. 20% of my time is spent on the discussion items and doing talking before I get into that simulator, and 80% of my time is spent mental chair flying about what I'm actually going to physically do once I get into that sweat box. Yeah, so that's how I prepare for simulators. I hope I wasn't telling you to suck eggs. I know sitting next to the guys that I fly with in the simulator, they probably don't need to hear most of that. I just thought it'd be of some interest to some of you guys, especially when you end up coming back to work. I know I am finding it hard to shift gears to get back into it. Joke of the day is not really a joke of the day. It's something that happened to me when I was a first officer. I hope I haven't told you this joke before. I'm getting the feeling after 50 videos that I'm going to start getting a bit vague and tell you the same joke twice. But I'm a brand new first officer in Melbourne. Got Jed Clampett, a Texan, and he's flying, and he's just given me the brief before takeoff. And he says, at the end of the brief, he goes, anyway, another house here, and I'm sitting there, I'm green as green. I think, man, that sounded important, so I better not miss it. And I said, Jed, look, I'm really sorry. What was that very last bit you said? And he looks at me a bit puzzled and goes, no, a house here, and I sat there and nodded, and about 10 seconds passed, and I thought, man, if that's important, I'm not going to forgive myself. So I said, Jed, I promise you I'm not making fun of you, but I still have no idea what you just said. And he looks at me and stares at me like, you know, the stare, and he says, nothing we haven't seen before. Anyway, enjoy yourselves. Have a great day. Hang in there. Yeah, that'll do.